Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Today we have EJ from CoinTracker. We're going to talk about the crypto tax product they put together and how it compares to some of the other ones on the market. So EJ, welcome to the channel. Please introduce yourself to the lovely folks of YouTube.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. My name is EJ. I lead growth and community here at CoinTracker. And before we get into anything, I wanted to have a quick disclaimer that I am not an accountant and this is not financial advice. If you do have tax questions, please reach out to a CPA or certified tax professional. If you don't know any, come to us and we'll help pair you with someone.
Absolutely. And guys, at any point during this video, if you have questions that come up that you would like answered, I can pass those along to EJ and his team too through the YouTube comments below. I'll collect them all and send them along to see if we can get some easy answers for them. So please do leave those in the comments. So I think the natural first place to start is to ask you what CoinTracker is all about and how you guys started and where you're based.
Absolutely. It's a good question. What is CoinTracker? Because there's a lot of coin this, track that, all this sort of stuff going on.
Got it, yeah.
So I can go a little bit into the backstory of CoinTracker. So CoinTracker was started a few years back by John Lerner and Chandan Lodha. Chandan, they were both working at Google at the time. Chandan was a PM at Google. After he graduated from Harvard, he started on Google Search, then moved his way to Google to Android, and ultimately worked on Project Loon, sort of in Google's moonshot factory with Google X, working on internet balloons, creating sort of like a tethered network around the world for internet access. And John came from University of Waterloo, where he started working on TextNow, which he built to be a pretty large company. It still exists today. He's still somewhat involved. Then found his way to Google, where he met Chandan, and together they really wanted to work on tackling sort of the next wave of financial infrastructure. They had some difficulties when they were trying to sort of transfer money between their bank accounts, and they realized how antiquated sort of legacy financial technology was, and they saw cryptocurrency as a really good way to sort of jump ahead several light years in terms of financial infrastructure. So they got to work and they pitched an idea to YC to build CoinTracker. Now at the time, this was a couple of years ago, there were no good portfolio tracking apps. Blockfolio sort of had you manually entering in transactions, which was really cumbersome. And so they started building out CoinTracker in YC's, I believe it was spring 2018 program or cohort. So we started building CoinTracker then, and then basically towards the end of the session, tax time was coming up. And it was 2018, so all the 2017 trades were coming up, and it was really just a nightmare. Chandan had created this Google sheet or this spreadsheet that was, tens of thousands of rows long. With all this different information, these crazy formulas involved depending on what the currency was and what the transaction type was. And he's like, there's got to be a better way to do this. This is all digitally native. It's all online. There's APIs for everything here. Like, why am I looking at rows in a spreadsheet? Why am I looking at a CSV?
Yeah.
And so he kind of was just like, waxing and waning and talking to all his friends and kind of ranting about like, oh, this is horrible. How does anybody do this? And they all kind of agreed. And one of them was like, if you can solve my crypto taxes, hey, you're working on crypto, you've got a portfolio tracker. If you can solve my taxes, I'll give you $500. And somebody else in the conversation was like, $500? No, I'll do it for $1,000. Like, this is taking up too much time out of my day. I don't want to think about this. And somebody kind of walking by hears this and they're like, $1,000? I'll give you $2,000. Like, this is such a nuisance. Like, I don't want to deal with this. I'll give you $2,000 so I don't have to go to jail. I don't want to deal with
it. Yeah. I don't have to think about it. Right.
Exactly. And so basically from the first minute there was product market fit, they're like, okay, I guess there's something here. And within 2 weeks, they were able to build sort of a prototype, which they then presented on demo day for YC. They were able to use this demo of our tax software to raise money from Alexis Ohanian, the founder of Reddit, Gary Tan of Initialized, Serena Williams, and a few other angel investors in the crypto space. And since then, we've never raised a seed round because we've been profitable and had strong product market fit.
Awesome. So obviously genesis of the product comes from, folks who are very familiar with software and what it takes to build software. So obviously that's a good thing to see, not just for protocol projects, but also for the ever important projects that help people make sense of what crypto is doing and to take care of their taxes, right?
Yeah.
For me personally, I've been doing some deep dives into crypto tax software lately because I too, while I'm not a trader and I don't do a lot of volume, even the small amount of trades that I do here and there throughout a year become extremely painful to evaluate at tax time and to create a strategy for years to come. Because I think people don't realize often until, they're in it, that tax strategy comes into play, not just for the year you're in, but also things you've done prior and in the future, things that you could do. Right. So, and again, no financial advice here, just telling you something to think about. So in terms of the feature set that CoinTracker has, can you give some of the key features? What could you expect as a user for CoinTracker?
Absolutely. And I definitely want to tackle that point that we mentioned of like decisions we make today have repercussions down the line. So people really have to think long-term, especially when it comes to tax. You're dealing with a body that is, almost 300 years old. And like, this is the revenue of the United States. Like they're not going to compromise on that stuff. But when it comes to CoinTracker, one of the key ways that we differentiate ourselves, I guess, starts with how we've built the company here. We're a very engineering first company. So of all the different crypto tax softwares, we are the most engineering dominant. Shandon and John are both engineers. So both engineer founders, as opposed to other players in the space who come from a marketing and sales background or a pure tax background or a design background. So we build ourselves around having really good tech at the first level. With that, as you can imagine, we have really strong integrations with all the different APIs, exchanges, and wallets. We really try to be everywhere that the user is going to be and pride ourselves on simplicity. We also have the ability to move really quickly. So whenever the community requests a new tool or a new exchange, we're able to iterate on it pretty quickly. It's a matter of days or weeks rather than months or years when it comes to CoinTracker. So you can think of like DeFi and sort of margin trading and futures and all the different lending. We're able to integrate with those platforms and all those different methods. Additionally, we also have a free tier, which no other sort of cryptocurrency tax software offers. We believe it's really important for people to be crypto compliant. And I'd argue about like 80-90% of users meet our free tier. So that's money that we're not making. We just think that people should be tax compliant because this has such long-term repercussions. Finally, I'll add that we sort of talk to the governing bodies a lot to learn what tax implications are coming down the pipes. Since this stuff is so nascent, the IRS hasn't been able to really give concrete answers on anything. So it really helps to be able to talk to the folks at the IRS on how they're thinking about things so that we can sort of tell you, hey, like none of this is actual tax guidance. This is just our best guess of how it's actually going to roll out. And we actually work that into our product. Additionally, when we do have an issue with your taxes, so say something doesn't exactly look right, like we think there's a transfer, but we can't really find the other side of it, or just a transaction ends up in a negative balance. We'll read all of those. We'll tell you about all the issues that we see with your report, any transactions that could cause any trouble, so that you can address those rather than file with something that you think is complete, but then the IRS comes back to you years later and says, hey, tell me about this transaction that you did in 2013.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too that even if you're someone that might not have done any real trading in crypto this year, and there are plenty of people in the space that haven't done a lot of trading, they've been, holding long-term, or they've divested in 2018 and now they're just kind of holding on to things that they've had for years and years. It's good to be able to import what you've had for the lifetime of your involvement in crypto so you can calculate, previous tax years. I mean, if you think about it, I know for a fact that there are hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of people that have had crypto for a long time and did not know how to treat it tax-wise. So they just didn't treat it at all in their taxes. And so now they can go back armed with some information to create a consistent strategy that's going to work out for them, at tax time, minimize your liability, maybe using a tool like this. Right. So that's pretty cool. And so you spoke about the free tier, for your software. What does that free tier get you as a user? And then what's the pricing for the upgrades, and what does that get you?
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to the free tier, we will handle your tax reports for up to 200 transactions. So that's basically a user who's doing a transaction every other day. At least I know personally for myself, like I didn't have over 200 transactions in 2019. Additionally, we'll handle all your tax reports. We'll create your TurboTax and Tax Act file. If you want to file through an accountant, you can share your dashboard with them. They can see all your forms. We'll generate your 8949. I'm going to spit out some numbers here, but they're not going to really mean much, but basically they're your tax forms. Now, let's say you're a more complex user. You trade more than 200 times a year, or you are involved in DeFi or margin trading. So like more complex tax profile. That's when you start to have to pay for features. So it'll jump up to $179 for our trader tier, which is 3,000 transactions in a year. So roughly 2 to 3 transactions a day, or rather, no, 10, just about 10 transactions a day. And that'll get you access to margin trading, DeFi, priority support. Most importantly, at least for me, I think is a really big one, the tax loss harvesting dashboard. So there's a lot of tax benefits that people can, that we help people out with in the crypto space. Crypto is really attractive from accruing a tax loss standpoint. So you can really offset your taxable amount, at least personally. Actually, I don't know if I should speak personally, but in the case of some of our users, I've seen them save thousands of dollars using our tax loss harvesting tools. And so that sort of like pays for the tool itself.
And for someone that may not know what tax loss harvesting is, I can start and you can feel free to sprinkle in. A tool like that will give you an idea of any specific crypto assets that you have that are currently valued in a place where if you were to make a sale and you were to trade and convert to cash, that would create a loss, capital loss. So that would offset against other capital gains or income, what have you. So it's a good way to track down opportunities to reduce your overall tax liability at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think in the technical terms of like the way we think of it in the space, it's basically when your cost basis in an asset in a position, so basically what you acquired it for, is higher than what the market value is. So say if I bought Bitcoin for 2,000 and it's currently worth 5,000, I can harvest that loss. And the really nice thing about crypto that you typically can't do in securities, which is like stocks or bonds, things like that. In traditional investing, you have something called a 30-day wash sale rule, which basically says that if I own 10 shares of Apple and I'm underwater in those, I want to harvest a loss for the year. I can sell it, but I have to wait 30 days to buy it back. So that 30-day window creates some uncertainty, which keeps people from doing it. In crypto, that only applies to securities and things like Bitcoin, which the IRS has clearly said, like, Bitcoin is not a security.
Yes.
So have Bitcoin. You can literally, if you're underwater, you can sell it and buy it right back, maintain the exact same position, but you can accrue a loss. So like you can basically put it on your tax form and say like, oh, I lost X amount of money and you get money back on your tax refund.
Absolutely. So if you're, again, not tax advice, but if you're a long-term Bitcoin holder, for example, and you think I'm going to hold this long-term, but you're in a place where you're, you go on your dashboard for tax loss harvesting, you say, hey, I've got some opportunity here to accrue a loss. You can do that and then immediately turn around and buy it back for the same price. Now you have a new cost basis to start running from. So fun fact, fun tip, pretty cool. So that's pretty interesting. I would say that is very different, having a pretty robust free tier. I think a lot of softwares, as soon as you start to try and get your forms generated, that's when people start to hit a paywall. I think I maybe have used 1 or 2 softwares where they let you bring in a few transactions to see how the features work. So you can figure out if you want to use it. And that's humane, but it's very interesting. 200 transactions will accommodate, I would say, a fair number of people that aren't traders, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially this year where the IRS is actually adding a crypto question on tax forms. Like, we think it's imperative that people start being tax compliant now. Also, it maybe starts with 200 transactions, but we work with users who have millions of transactions. So we can really scale and grow with you as your crypto history, as your portfolio grows. So, and I think our highest tier is currently $500. I may have to check on that, but it's really not that expensive when you consider all the different features you're getting, as well as all of the benefits. And when it comes to sort of the IRS, we think it's really important that people file, obviously, and are tax compliant. But if that's not a compelling argument for you, which for many people it isn't, the statute of limitations for the IRS are pretty compelling. If you file everything properly, so if you're using a good tax software like us and, filing with an accountant or TurboTax, typically the statute of limitations, so the look back period that the IRS can use to audit you, is 3 years.
Right.
If you do all that, but you grossly misstate your income, like say I make $1 million in a year, but I'm only reporting 50 grand on my taxes, then they can go back. Actually, that's technically fraud.
Yes.
If I'm grossly misstating my income, they can go back 6 years instead of 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the case of fraud or not filing at all, which is what a lot of people in crypto have been doing, just not filing, they can look back forever. So
right.
We're really telling people to like get the ball rolling, just like, file your tax reports, pay something in taxes, or just file something so that you can start the statute of limitations and really protect yourself, rather than be, 30 years from now, and then it'll be 2050 and you won't even know what you had for breakfast, but then the IRS will be asking you, hey, what were you doing in 2017? What were you doing in 2020?
Yeah. And I think that's the scary thing for a lot of people, is whether or not you like the lack of clarity, or you like the policy approach that we've had so far towards crypto. Mm-hmm. You have to do, in my opinion, the best thing you can to protect yourself, because it's not worth the liability of penalty that you can face, for especially for people that maybe made a few $100 on crypto. It's not worth just not bothering and not doing it. It potentially opens you up to a whole larger world of pain, if nothing else. The time it takes to deal with the repercussions of that. So
yeah, absolutely.
So moving it back though to CoinTracker and your specific offering, I know you mentioned DeFi and some of these other like margin trading and some other things that are more advanced and are more niche, I think. Mm-hmm. Is that one of the only premium or paid user benefits, or are there others that folks that end up paying would get over a free tier user, for example?
Definitely. So yeah, it's a DeFi, margin trading, lending, sort of like the more complex things going on in crypto right now. But additionally, they get priority support. So okay. We don't deny anybody our chat support, but granted, you can imagine it's pretty busy right now. So it's like, if you are a free customer, it's probably going to take us longer to get back to you than if you are a priority customer who has 1 million trades and transacts really heavily with us in the year. Mm-hmm. So you get priority support by moving up to a paid plan. You'll get access to that tax loss harvesting dashboard, which will let you basically minimize your taxes for future tax years. Free users get the exact same cost basis methods as paid users. So it's not like you only get FIFO. No, we're giving you FIFO, LIFO, HIFO, all the different ways that you can.
All that jazz.
Exactly. All the different. Other than that, we give you access to, I believe, sort of like a tax implications dashboard. So if I were to model a trade, so like say if I wanted to dump one of my positions, I want to know what that's going to look like on my taxes. Mm-hmm. I believe that's even accessible to free users in some capacity. You can just create a transaction and preview it on our machine. But really, it's transactions, it's complex DeFi and crypto stuff, and priority support that you're paying for.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I think that makes sense as an offering, and clearly the incentives are aligned for users to just give it a try and just try and understand how taxes work in this case.
Yeah.
At least this is something that I've heard from people that I've spoken to about crypto taxes, and there's no policy here yet. But mm-hmm. You mentioned FIFO, LIFO, HIFO, all of these different accounting methods for crypto transactions. And I would say on average, most people would not think about this at all. But that's something that I think is a huge benefit, even if you're not going to use a crypto tax software long-term. Pull your trades in to understand how HIFO, LIFO, FIFO, all those things look for you, to see what might make sense the most for your specific situation, because I think consistency is key. You mm-hmm. want to pick one and then continue on with that one for perpetuity, right?
Yep, you got it.
So I think that's another big feature. And if that's not behind a paywall, it's really helpful for people to just at least understand the implications of those different accounting methods for them, both retroactively and future forward, future looking.
Absolutely. Yeah. We completely agree. I think I'm probably going to grossly misquote somebody, but I believe one of the founding fathers, may have been Benjamin Franklin, said every citizen has the obligation to pay taxes, but they also have the obligation to minimize their tax burden as much as possible. Basically means like, mm-hmm. hey, you should pay taxes. It's for the good of everyone, but you should pay as little in taxes as you can possibly. So by giving people access to all of these different cost basis methods, we give them the agency to choose what's right for them. And yeah, certainly pick one and stick to it. While you technically can switch cost base every year, if anything ever happens, it's going to leave a really long paper trail and be really difficult to defend. So yeah, certainly pick what's right for you. Stick with it.
For sure. So then again, I also wanted to take a stab at another question. And if this could obviously go into a more technical realm, so we can, start shallow and then go deeper. I think an important thing that doesn't get talked about in a lot of the content out there about crypto tax software, and I've also been guilty of this, not asking the right questions, but what is the posture towards information security when it comes to these things? Because I think a big, even though people are filing taxes and you're essentially giving up information about your wallets and such by doing so.
Yeah.
Obviously, when that stuff is associated with your name and your everything related to your public keys is in there in a raw format, like it would be in your software. How are you guys approaching protecting that information and making sure people's stuff stays secure?
Absolutely. So trust is definitely at the center of our relationship with our customers and that we do. And a lot of our sort of like partnerships, such as with Coinbase, like they have very high standards for data integrity. Now, when it comes to that stuff, the beauty of it is that we don't actually ask for your right access API keys. So we can't actually change any of the transaction information on your accounts. We can't create new trades. We can't move your funds. We're looking for view access, but there's still some exposure when it comes to that stuff. We're fortunate in that the risk vector is pretty small because since we're not custodying your assets, we don't have access to move them. People aren't as interested in we're not as attractive as a target as other exchanges might be.
Certainly.
When it comes to keeping sort of your privacy in mind, all we ever ask for is your email address. We don't ask for your phone number. We don't ask for your name, social security, tax ID, location. We'll know what country you're in by the tax reports you choose, which is, you can file with us through the US, Canada, UK, and Australia. And we have folks in over 145 countries that use us regardless, even if we don't perfectly match their tax situation. But we don't ask for PII, or personally identifiable information, other than your email address.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. And I think that's a key thing to note. So I'm going to, just based on the information you just told me, I'm going to recommend to folks, if you sign up for CoinTracker, create a separate email to just to protect your OPSEC, right?
Yep.
Create a separate email that's separate from your identity. Use that to get your reports generated, to import all your stuff, and then run from there, right? So you don't have to open yourself up to potential for somebody to match your public keys with your name. You don't have to do it. So why not protect yourself, right?
And as another, you always use a obviously strong password, use a different password every time. Use a password manager. Like it makes it a lot easier. I'd rather not have a piece of paper floating around with all my different combinations. But new email or different email address, which you can even have forward to your existing email address, and a strong password, strong unique password, you're golden. You're ahead of 99.9999% of the pack.
Totally with you. And I'm going to throw a shameless plug in here. I actually released a video today, and it's Tuesday, the 18th of Feb, about personal information security, which encompasses a lot of what was just talked about: password managers, how to create a unique and strong password, all that jazz. So I'll link it up here for you guys to watch. But, again, when it comes to taxes for people in crypto, I think that a big challenge is, first of all, understanding what policy is today, and then trying to contextualize what you're seeing on that dashboard once you've imported your transactions to figure out what to do from there. And I'm just curious what your posture is at CoinTracker in terms of educating the user, what type of documentation and availability of people in support that have that accounting and tax knowledge that can share, at least preliminary non-binding advice with folks.
Absolutely. So when it comes to like our tax expertise, I would defer to Shehan, our head of tax strategy, who really is sort of like spearheading all of this. He leads several CPE courses, or basically kind of like how in medicine or in law, you have to take a certain amount of credits every year to stay accredited and ensure that you keep your certification. A CPE is what CPAs do. He leads several courses a week on cryptocurrency taxes. So he's out there educating the accountants, in a lot of cases, the people you're dealing with, on how to work with cryptocurrencies. Beyond that, he is a contributor for both Forbes and Bloomberg Crypto. So he's writing about this stuff day in and day out. When he's not doing that, he has strong connections with the IRS and sort of talking to them about how they're thinking about cryptocurrency tax. And we keep a direct line of communication with them so that we can sort of be in the loop with anything that's coming up. And then we will relay all of our customers that. So we send an email blast every time we have new blog posts, and typically we have a lot of blog content about taxes. We try to distill it to the sort of easiest way to understand, because tax stuff can be pretty boring and or just really it's not fun stuff to read, and there's only so much you need to know. So we'll distill that information out for the user. When it comes to somebody asking us a direct question about taxes, I've actually been really impressed with that here. We've been really versatile. In the time that I've been here, a bunch of users have come through and either had issues with like CP2000 notices from the IRS, which is basically when the IRS starts coming after you for money when they're like, hey, we sent you a notice that you didn't file your taxes correctly. We've worked with several users in those cases. One most notably actually ended up with a tax return. So the IRS is like, hey, you owe us money. And he flipped it on them. He's like, no, you owe me money, after coming to us. So that was pretty fun. And we help users generate letters. We'll help pair them with the right CPAs and tax professionals in their area. And in the case of one-off questions, we'll even just answer them. Or if it's a question that we don't know the answer to, we'll figure it out, because it's our job to know that stuff.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I think people sometimes might question, pedigree is only so much, it only goes so far because it's only one person. But I think for this specific issue of cryptocurrency taxation, to have folks that are interfacing with the policymakers and the people talking about this stuff in enforcement, as well as someone who is teaching other accountants about this, is pretty helpful, because at least there'll be some continuity between all the different sources, right? Because I have an accountant now that I use for this stuff, because it's now gotten to the point where I don't have time or patience to deal with it by myself. And anytime I have questions about crypto, this is where I go to a resource like a CoinTracker to say, I need something to pass to my CPA to tell them how to treat this, because not all CPAs know how to deal with cryptocurrency effectively.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. And we don't expect them to. It's like, it's all very nascent. Like this time, like DeFi is only a couple of years old, and like the taxation around it is really complicated depending on which protocol you're using.
Yes.
And like we'll specialize in that. We'll write up all the content, but I really don't expect my 65-year-old accountant who lives in Florida to understand this stuff. So
right. Yeah, it's really new, and especially to your point with DeFi, I think that's a pretty unique feature to some of these softwares like yours, where that's starting to get integrated into the equation, because not everything now is a trade. You've got interest earning products, you've got loans against crypto, like collateralized loans, non-collateralized loans, and all sorts of things that would baffle me in terms of looking at my tax liability regarding those things. So super helpful. So for a user that is trying to figure out, do I qualify for free tier or do I not? Because I feel like most people wouldn't know what their transaction numbers are for the year. How would they go about signing up? And then how do you guys deal with importing transactions and letting people know, hey, you're about to run over to a paid plan?
Absolutely. So you can import as many transactions as you like. It's not like we'll put a barrier and say, sorry, you've used up your limit.
Mm-hmm.
So what we recommend is that users come to us, they sign up, which is always free, and start importing transactions. If you use some of the major exchanges like Coinbase, our Coinbase integration is really shiny. It's simple. You can even single sign on through Coinbase and we'll take care of it for you. Otherwise, you can either import your API keys, so read access API keys, to your major exchanges, as well as CSVs if we don't support by any chance an exchange that you like, or an exchange is now defunct like Cryptopia. You can upload a CSV of those transactions. And when it comes to actually figuring out how many transactions you've had in a year, all you need to do is navigate to your tax dashboard, which is at the top of our page, and we'll tell you explicitly for a tax year how many transactions you have. And transactions don't necessarily correlate with orders. Like I may place a buy order for $10,000 worth of Bitcoin, but that will probably execute over several different trades. Those numbers, those individual trades each have separate cost basis because you're not getting it all at the same price. Those constitute multiple transactions.
Got it. Okay. So yeah, specific identification is another aspect of it, because you talk about things like Bitcoin that use, unspent transaction outputs. Each of those outputs is going to have its own unique basis, right? So that's interesting. Great point. So the last question in this same vein is, if I'm a user that has, let's just say 400 transactions all time, 2016, 2017, and then through 2018 and 2019, is your pricing based on their lifetime transaction count or per annum?
It's per annum, but say case where you have 400 transactions lifetime, assuming it's like it's 50, like every year distributed, as long as you're under $200, we'll generate all your tax years for free. If 1 year you had, 300 transactions, then you have to pay for a higher tier. But the nice thing about that is it's not sort of like a one and done. Like you get it once, you have 14 days to run your report and that's it. No, we will keep running those reports in perpetuity as many different ways as you'd like. So in 10 years from now, if you want to rerun all your reports, but you paid for them a while ago, we will do it. You want to choose a different cost basis? We'll do it. Like we'll take care of all that stuff using the right forms. So you pay once per year and then you're good for life.
Excellent. And I would recommend for folks that do sign up, and I think it would be worth it for you guys to sign up if you're watching and at least check it out, see if it's for you, just to run a couple reports in different accounting mechanisms, send that off to your accountant or compare them yourself just to see, compare and contrast and see how they look. Giving options, especially if you haven't made a determination yet, is always good. Secondarily, I'm curious what your approach to monetization is, or why you've decided not to monetize at a free tier.
Absolutely. So I think we're really fortunate to be in the position we're in, where we have strong product market fit. People are really loyal to us. They tend to stay with us year after year. And we have a very long-term view when it comes to the space. We're not looking to make a quick buck. We really do think, and I think everybody here is on board when I say that crypto is going to be very big. It's the new financial paradigm. And so we really just want to position ourselves to be able to grow with that ecosystem. And I think we close ourselves out a lot if we're looking to just make money immediately. And we're fortunate in that a lot of customers do pay us to create this solution for them. And we have even more customers who want to tip us in Bitcoin, or they want to pay for premium portfolio tracking tools that will likely release at some point in the future. But when it comes to it, the free tier ends up being a really good way to start having the conversations about tax. And it sort of lowers the barrier for people to be scared of crypto and start transacting. And so it's really us putting our money where our mouth is and saying, hey, this is infrastructure that the world needs if we want crypto to be as big and as open as we want it to be. So we're willing to forego a few bucks to really help it achieve its full potential.
Fair enough. I'm totally on board with that type of mission. Certainly. So speaking of that, I think the last place that I wanted to go, I'm being mindful of folks' time, coming up on 45-minute mark, is you alluded to briefly some portfolio tracking features and other things that might be introduced in the future. Where are you guys going from here? Like, what's the roadmap? At least what can you share with me about where you're going from 2020 and onward with CoinTracker? Yeah.
So I'm not sure how much I can say because, everything is bound to change.
Certainly. Yep.
We're a private company. And I'm not the one actually writing the code and implementing all these changes. Right. But really succinctly, I can say that short term, we're really focused on sort of just being the best at crypto tax. And there's a lot that comes with that. And just like not only getting the tax implications right, but having this most robust product and just 0% downtime. We want to win at tax because it's a really difficult problem, but it sets the right incentive structure where we have to integrate with every different exchange, every different wallet, and sort of meet the user where they're at. So by winning at tax, not only do we get these really nice fancy integrations, but we also win the user's trust. And I think once we have the user's trust, sort of like the world is endless. I think you and I can both agree that we think crypto is going to be sort of this open financial paradigm.
Yep.
But the way that it's kind of turned out, it hasn't really been, because how hard is it to move your funds from Coinbase to Binance or to through any different wallet? And sort of, you really start to see the limitations of the system. It's like walled gardens, right? It's like Coinbase has this beautiful castle and there's all this stuff going on inside of it, and it's great. But the second that you want to get outside of it or do something in Binance's ecosystem or Kraken's, whatever Kraken's got going on, it's really difficult. And so you actually end up creating this open financial network with a lot of walls. And it happens a lot in the project ecosystem as well, where DeFi protocols want to lock you into their place because that's more money for their pools. Yep. And it's kind of like completely counter to the ethos of the space, like what we think is going to build. And so I think tax positions us not only to win the user's trust to build this really nice integration, but really help facilitate the flow of information, the flow of this open finance network. So I don't want to get into sort of what those products would look like, but if you can imagine what it looks like when you're truly integrated with all the different crypto protocols and projects and exchanges and wallets, you can really start to have information throughput and build really cool solutions on top of it.
Fantastic. I'm with you on that. And I also think that moving into being in a place where you're building software that is not a protocol, that is not a lending platform, or, I think a lot of DeFi products started out as, consumers or users of a protocol, and then shifted to maybe they want to build their own protocol or their own cryptocurrency, their, whatever.
Yeah.
And being in a position where you are a software that's really, parallel, but still tangential from crypto, like you guys are, it gives you the opportunity to build stuff that makes this new technology easier to deal with in your everyday life. So I can totally get behind that mission.
Absolutely. And we're really fortunate to be in a position where we get to be democratic, where we don't have to be political. If someone thinks something is a shit coin or something that's not worth investing in, that's fine. That's for the community to decide. If the community wants an asset or keeps asking for support for some exchange, we will offer it because it's what the community wants. It's not like we have to draw a line in the sand and have to be political. So we let the users decide what actually gets built.
I think that makes it a lot easier for a wider variety of people to use it if they don't have to stress about compatibility and all that stuff.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
So thanks very much, EJ, for joining. I want to give you an opportunity to close out and give any closing thoughts that you had, if you have any. But I really do appreciate you talking about CoinTracker on the channel.
Awesome. Absolutely. And we're happy to sort of give you a link, sort of an affiliate link, unlock 10% off for your users and make it easier for them if they have to pay for a plan to work with CoinTracker. As I mentioned, we're free up to 200 transactions, and we'll cover 90% of people's use cases with that stuff. And if that doesn't meet your needs, we have solutions for you, and we work with users. We even day trade or hedge funds and people who really have high volume. So we span the entire gamut. If there's anything that people want, they can request it either through our forum or our chat support, or even on Twitter. We're really vocal on Twitter and try to reach people there. So yeah, that's sort of, I think most of CoinTracker has been covered in the last 45 minutes.
Awesome. Well, that is my job and my goal. And hopefully, guys, if you're in the market for a crypto tax software, you might be able to get it done for free this year. Go and give CoinTracker a try. I'll leave the link down below. Like EJ said, if you do have to pay for a plan, but fingers crossed you don't, you can get 10% off using that link, and it's always appreciated. So with that, EJ, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, my friend, and thanks for being on.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Awesome. Cheers, everybody.